From the Tower of London to Castlerock, one veteran's journey as a Yeoman Warder to settling in Northern Ireland. Welcome to Once a Warrior, Life Beyond the Uniform. In this episode, we're joined by Shaun Huggins, a former British Army soldier whose second act saw him don the iconic and gold of a Yeoman Warder, or Beefeater, at the Tower of London. Known for his engaging presence with the public and steeped in centuries-old tradition, Shaun brings a rich ceremonial perspective to what it means to serve. Shaun reflects on identity, heritage, and the quiet pride of life beyond the tower. Welcome to this episode of Once a Warrior, Life Beyond the Uniform. Delighted today to be joined by Shaun Huggins, ex-Royal Anglian, who then ended up working in the Tower of London. Interesting life, looking forward to getting into it. Shaun, absolutely delighted to have you here today. Thanks for joining us.
Pleased to meet you.
How are you keeping?
Very good, very good.
Looking forward to today, I'm sure.
Good, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So we usually just start right out of the gate of where you're from. Where were you born? Anything in the early life that stands out?
Yeah, I was born in Norwich, in hospital in Norwich, but I came from a little town, a market town in Norfolk called Halston. It's right in the middle of East Anglia, so you're sort of close to Norwich, you're close to Ipswich, and you're close to Great Yarmouth, so you're right in the middle there. But from Norfolk, and that's where I went to school. Went to school at Archbishop Sancroft in my town of Halston, and that's where I got educated and spent all my youth.
Excellent. And at what stage did you think, I want to be in the military? Was that early on, or did something happen to trigger that?
I'm from a family of 5. I had one brother. He was older than me. He's 10 years above me. And he joined the army when he could, exactly, as a junior leader. And from that moment, and I said he's 10 years older than me, from that moment when he joined, I wanted to join. And everything I'd done from that moment on was to join up. I wanted to follow his footsteps. So very easy story. That was it. I wanted to follow my brother.
No doubts on that journey. Once your mind was made up, that was it. Nothing else.
No.
Was there anything else in terms of a career that sort of interested you? Was it?
Well, a little bit of both, but I found out a little bit later, fairly early on in my army career, that I could carry on with the both. So I played the drum. I was a very keen drummer. I was a very keen kit drummer. I played for the school band and was going to go one way on the music side, but I had it in my head. I was, the army was going to be for me. But then I discovered when I joined cadets, and like everything I'd done was to join up. So I had to join cadets, and there was an ex-Viking 1st Battalion ex-drummer who was the captain there at the time, and he embraced me and said, "Oh, I'd love to have a drummer in my platoon." So I could already play. He taught me the rudiments and stuff, and he says, "Right, every parade we go on, you're going to be the drummer there, single drummer, no other corps drums around, no other band."
Right.
So I would often just tap the beat and stuff. And when we went up, when there was big things happening, he would dress me up in scarlets and then take me to these things wearing a drum. And that was it. So when I joined the military, then I realized and I was about 3 months behind the intake, but I joined as a junior soldier at Basenborn.
Okay.
At the time, there was 2 intakes. There was one before the summer and one after in September, which is the one I took. But realizing the one before was the drummers. Now, the drummers that joined there, you all stood in parade. There was 3 platoons of junior intake. The drum major come out on the first morning. The divisional drum major, and he went, "I'm going to have that platoon." You had no choice. So that platoon was chosen. They were then the drummers. They were going to do, instead of a year, they were going to do 18 months to learn the skills of a drummer. Anyway, to cut a long story short, that had started. I wanted to be with them. 3 months into my training as a junior soldier, I said, I want to jump across. And they let me jump across.
Right. Okay.
Well, we'll go through drummer.
We'll go through a little bit of your military service, but staying on that sort of music theme, I think you actually finished up a drum major.
Yeah. So all through my career, I stayed with that, but I was an infanteer. I always knew that, and the love of both I was luckily to have in my career. So the majority of my time I was with drums, but we were SF, we were machine guns, GPMG SF. Other units done different things, but we done GPMG SF. And for me, that suited me down to the ground because I was doing two things I loved. And I went through the ranks and thought I was good enough to instruct on both. And so I ended up at Catterick as an instructor.
Right.
As I was then promoted on when I was away at Catterick, realised that was the thing I wanted to do the most. There was a guardsman that sat there as a W1. There's only one W1 drum major in the army, and that's the position at Catterick. Always coveted by guards, and I said, I want that
I
job.
want that one.
And I did manage to get it to Clark,
Very
actually.
good.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. And is there something that's overlooked, you think, sometimes, that when people think military career, they maybe don't realize that they could have a love for maybe sport, maybe music, and they actually can fulfill both ambitions? You can be in the military and you can also, at a very high level, be involved in things like music or sport.
Yeah, definitely. And I just was so lucky to find something that I loved, and to do both. Like I said, since my brother joined, I wanted to wear green. That was what I wanted to do, and I loved that the cadets brought that on. The nights out in the tent, and the weapon training, the field craft. It was all there. I wanted that, but the drumming stuff was there in equal measure. So I was lucky that I could do that.
Yeah, it is sometimes underestimated, just the skill of military musicians. I mean,
Yes.
to be able to march and play
Yeah, no,
itself
it is a tough
is an
one.
incredible feat.
And going back
of
to that
skill.
selection of how they used to do it back in the day, of course, now there's more volunteers. It
Okay.
became a phase 3 element, and you volunteered from your unit generally. But back then, you were just selected.
Yeah. No, it is
And that
interesting. I
was
mean, I was big into sport, so I was fortunate to play for the Great Britain Territorial Army team, as it
Yeah.
was then, and we used to play the regular army every year in Aldershot, and it was more or less a full-time professional team.
Yeah.
They did some soldiering, but by and large, if it was boxing, athletics, suppose Dame Kelly Holmes, within the military, you had some really elite sports people that were at the top of their game on a world level in some cases.
Yeah.
And exactly the same if you think some of the, obviously being from Royal Irish background, some of the pipers, phenomenal levels of playing ability.
And I met quite a few on my journey. There was cross-country runners, boxers. I jumped ship halfway through my career. I was a Viking, 1st Battalion, North Suffolk, basically. And we were big into our boxing. But rugby and football was a biggie as well in there. But when I jumped ship to the Poachers in 1998, I saw a different level of boxing there. They loved it. They just loved their boxing. Everything was focused on their boxing. So, yeah, I met quite a few sportsmen throughout, and they would just disappear and do their thing.
Yeah.
Much
to the envy of others sometimes,
Much to the envy of others.
sometimes just the PR for the regiment, and then obviously from an army point of view, it's a good story. And again, as from a recruiting point of view, to be able to fulfill sporting music ambitions while serving in the military, as you say, it's great to be able to do both. So during your training, then you've mentioned there's some of that, but the infantry training, I'm assuming it was the normal 9-month course initially for that. It was additional for the music, but any time during the training, did you think, this isn't for me, or this is harder than I thought? You were happy enough?
No, happy enough. I think the same as everyone. You go through your little ups and downs, but no, my mind was firmly getting through training, and no matter what happened in training, all the stuff that we used to do, the things that I know people would frown upon now, or what you would class as messing about, sort of. No, I loved it all.
And what year did you start your training?
83. September 83.
5 years. I went in 88 and I joined the Army Reserve as it was then. So yeah, 5 years previous. So I was old 58 pattern webbing still in those days. Must have been.
Yeah, well, when I first joined, it was putties and that. The lessons from the Falklands was seeping through in '83. So the boot
Right,
issue
okay,
and
yeah.
the uniform issue was coming through. So I started with DMS and putties and scratchy shirts and
all of those.
yeah, and ended up with nicer kit at the end of it.
The young recruits now do not know how easy they have it.
No, them scratchy shirts. I don't know how I got through to this
Oh,
day.
that's unreal.
I wore one of the red or white PT shirts.
Yes.
To get under there. Yeah.
But then you go back to, say, the First World War in the trenches and look at what they were wearing then.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, exactly.
it'd be hard enough taking the modern day soldier and putting them in First World War trenches, like
Yeah.
the Somme, you know, as an example, 1st of July. But then to go back and do it in the kit that they had, I mean, it's just almost inconceivable.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I often think, and I mean, anyone I think who served, you do often think back, especially when you read a book about the First World War, the Second World War, you think, wow, how did you do that?
Oh,
You think about what you had and what they've got now. I mean, it's
yeah, exactly. Even from now,
incredible.
you know, I was in Iraq in '04, and yet what soldiers are wearing now, I mean,
Yeah.
it's different night and day.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
which is, you know. Well, in terms of your career then, so many years were you in the Royal Islands?
So, like I said, I served with both the Vikings and then the poachers, and half really. So it's difficult to say which I was. I loved them both. I
You're going to
ended
sit on
up.
the fence. You're going to sit
I'm
on the
going to
fence
sit
and
on the
defend
fence.
nobody.
Generally, if people ask me now, I say poachers because I finished with the poachers. So it's probably a year or so more with the poachers. But yeah, so it's 23 years, and then I did have a chance to go on the long service lift before it sort of closed down, just for a year.
Yeah.
But that was when I was going for my next career at the Tower. So that was sort of like a stand-in period before.
Yeah. Okay. And then I know you did Afghanistan quite early on, and then you were just in terms of exercises and your different parts of the world. Can you speak to some of the places you've been, some of the standout memories?
I'd say that's, for me, young boy from Norfolk, hadn't been, done the normal Scotland, Cornwall holidays, but to join up and travel, my first tour, Londonderry, big boy stuff, I felt like a grown up. I was here for 2 years. I then went to Gibraltar, which was amazing, although I think Gibraltar was where I was probably the most homesick. When I sort of, I say in training, I never thought about home. I just got it done. But Gibraltar, I think, because when we were here, I was in Londonderry, and we had things in place where you went home quite often. Gibraltar, that wasn't in place. All those things were taken off you. Your flights were taken off you. That sort of thing. So I found that quite difficult. You were saving pretty much for a flight for every 6 months. So that was, and I actually ended up getting out at the end of that because I went from like an operational role in Londonderry to a barrack guard role, basically, or a ceremonial duties role in Gibraltar. And I just found that was too much. That was just right. That was too much because we'd done a lot of drumming stuff still in that period, but in Gibraltar it was just ceremonial stuff. We were there at the time of the attack over there and the shootings. That was the Vikings were there at that time.
They were there at the time?
Yeah. So we found ourselves in front of newspapers at that time.
Okay.
It was then I decided that I would have a look on the other side as a young boy because of the 2 years. I joined just after my 16th birthday, so I'd done 2 years before my 3 years are up. So I'd sort of done 5 years at that time and decided that I'd have a look on the other side. I did. I didn't like it. Within a year, I was sort of back, and I rejoined the Vikings in Colchester.
Okay.
I then went to Depot and was an instructor there. And then that's when I sold my soul and went to the poachers.
Okay.
So something wasn't done then. For officers, it did happen at that level with between the regiments. But back then, the sergeants and below, we didn't do a lot.
And what rank were you at this?
So as a sergeant, I'd just been promoted to a sergeant. They were looking. The poachers they were then going to Cyprus. Again, that was for another reason, a good reason to jump. So I had that in my head, I also had the fact that I was going to be made a unit drum major before my time, and so that's when I made a decision to jump ship and go across to the poachers. So I done Cyprus, then came back to Chepstow, then to Ballykelly. So yeah, I would say to anyone, just in what I've just said there, that the scope that I had to go around the world, and you imagine in Cyprus you could go to places like Jordan, and I mean even from Cyprus we went to the Falklands, and so I didn't, but my a couple of my platoon they did. So we were traveling. The travel opportunities just were incredible.
Yeah,
and I loved.
yeah, you're mentioning travel, and again, there's probably a lot of people join the military because they want to travel. So you mentioned Afghanistan. I know your places they were Jordan, Germany, and you've mentioned the Falklands there as well. From your
Yeah.
that people had a chance to go to. So what was that like? As you say, you were kind of never went outside the UK up until that point. Is that right? And
Yeah,
then you had
no,
a chance to travel.
it's right. No, and so even so, going to when the first 2 years in London, it was here, and we were going back. It was nice, but already you were away from town. When you went home, you flew back or ferried back, and you had to travel the train. So it was all very exciting. Yeah, from the off, travel was amazing, and of course back then you could afford the little holidays, and so as soon as you join up, you're doing something out of the norm that you wouldn't do sort of back in your hometown. No, I love to travel. Even for exercise, you know, some of the exercises we done were quite hard. Jordan was very hard exercise. We were in the desert, a lot of that, but the experience you pick up from that. We done trumpet dance, the old trumpet dance in North America, up near Seattle.
Okay.
Yakima Ranges, I think the best ranges I ever done live firing for a GPMG SF point of view. We never really had the scope. You had the ranges over here, a lot of burning stuff. Never the real scope to watch soldiers move in front of your, as you're firing, you move to the safeties.
Okay.
Just incredible. So all those things you experienced, then your R&R, went to Canada and that, Vancouver. So you did, and you went away and you worked hard, and the old cliche, work hard, play hard, and that's exactly it. And the travel was part of that.
Did I hear or someone mention to me Bermuda?
Yes. So yeah, no, Bermuda was an experience. We were in Chepstow at the time, and we'd moved across from Cyprus. I'll go into this story because it's all part of it. I'd just been promoted to car sergeant, and was in fact, it was just before. So we were then going to the new 2000 Orbat, which was taking away the machine guns from a specific platoon, still leaving them in the companies, but the LSW was in play big time. So that was what they wanted. So the 2000 Orbat, which pretty much split us up. So basically our battalion on the move back for Chepstow said, right, you are now going to be a rifle platoon. Now, I'd done senior Brecon, so I was qualified. So I was going to be the sergeant of that, and they were going to move an officer in. So that's what they did. And we were 6th Platoon B Company, and we were still trying to do half and half drumming and stuff. And we were looking for ways to get out and, take our red tunics out and do the drumming side of stuff. And Bermuda was an idea that was my boss come up, and he said, "Yeah, we're gonna save up. We're gonna go across. We'll take all the kit, and we'll do a bit of adventure training, and that's how we're gonna get across there." So that was his plan. Now, strangely enough, as an officer, they bumped the band quite a lot, and they decided that he wasn't going to stay with 6th Platoon.
Right.
I'd become a colour sergeant, so I was eligible to be the platoon commander. So I took over that.
Right.
He disappeared. He left the plans sitting on his desk in the folder, and I got to take the platoon to Bermuda, and it was during 9/11. So just as we arrived, within 2 days, that was when the planes hit. And you can imagine, but Bermuda's very Americanized. There's lots of Americans in there, and lots of tour boats and stuff. The regiment has always had a presence there. So I think our adjutant or 2IC was there at the time, a guy that I did know. So he was looking after us. We had a senior rank that was always there as well. They were looking after us. But we were just, what do we do here? And basically, I think the plan was, look, you're here now. Let's do this. The bands were still going, so we attached ourselves to the Bermuda band. So we said, right, we'll go off and do some of that. And that's actually probably one of the most memorable things I'd done, because it was just such.
That's an unusual experience.
Yeah, it was, because there's obviously a lot of chaos, a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of sadness, but there was also a lot of pride, a lot of pride, and we felt it big time. The Americans, they just, everywhere we went, they lined the routes, they were clapping. It was just, it's quite an experience, really, real big one.
And you managed to avoid the Bermuda Triangle. So
we came back.
You actually came back.
Yeah.
Which is probably
I think
on your way out. That's probably one of the main,
some of the guys
the main goals.
at that.
And we'll just make sure we get back.
Bermuda, Chepstow. Come on. Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah, a lot wanted to stay, but no, that was our time there. Not for very long, but it was memorable.
Yeah. So your experience through services has been positive.
Yes.
I've listened to you speak. Something you'd recommend to people, youngsters who are considering a career. You would certainly say, consider the military, music, sport, obviously military, travel. You've hit some.
No, still to this day, for me, a youngster, do you know, the life experience, even if you do a small amount of time, the life experience you pick up there, there's be something that you learn that will carry you through your lifetime.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Well, our podcast is very much sort of Once a Warrior, because we already get into a bit about the transition, and then what have soldiers done or military personnel done after service. So sometimes even when they leave, all people want to talk about is what did you do in the military. But we're trying very much in this podcast to discuss that transition period, which for some is okay and positive, others it brings challenges, and then on into what sort of post-service brought. So when you decided to leave, was there sort of a bit of fear, a bit of trepidation, a bit of uncertainty, or had you a clear path ahead of you when it came to transition?
No, I think I was at Catterick as the senior drum major. It was something I'd aimed to be. So for me, I got to the
You
stage.
fulfilled all your goals, if you like.
I'd hit everything that I wished to do. So I was very happy with that respect, very comfortable. I was actually, myself and Dawn were thinking about staying around Catterick. It was a lovely area, Richmond, beautiful countryside. So we were looking to stay around there. I think if that would have been the case, I don't know what I would have ended up as. But just as I was finishing the senior drum major role at Catterick, we'd been down to London, and I'd found out that a friend I worked with at Catterick, actually as an instructor, had got a role as a Yeoman Warder at the Tower of London. So I had his number. I called and said, "Look, are you about?" He said, "Yeah, I'm at work. Do you want to pop in and see me?" So we had the family. He got us through the gate, and we walked around, and I was just flabbergasted. I had been there as a kid, but as a kid, you see things differently. And I stood there as an adult, soon to be leaving the army. And I just said to him, "How did you get this? How did you get this gig? This is good." And he told me, and there is a criteria, and I'll go into that into a second. But he said, "This is how you do it." And I said, "Well, in fact, the London trip was a little bit earlier than I got out. So this was probably about 4 years before." Okay. And just when I'd seen him. And so I had this, and I remember this one time we stood in there, and I said to Dawn, "I could do this. I could do this. I've got everything he says there." And then we left it at that, and I carried on. Just before my service finished, I went back to that question, and I wrote a letter to the Tower and said, "I'm now finishing. I've got the criteria that you're after. I've done this, this, and this. I would love to become a Yeoman Warder." And I heard nothing for a year, thus the long service list. So I heard nothing for a year. I think that they were stocked up at that time. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call saying, look, we are recruiting. Would you like to come along, and we've got your introductory letter. Would you like to come along and trial out?
The rest is history, as they say.
And the rest is, and it is history, because
Yeah.
it was such an amazing thing. So going, adding on to that, so I did go down and for the interviews, and the Towers is an amazing place. You stand there, you just, the history in there just seeps into you.
Yeah.
You know.
So you were able, just before we go on to the Yeoman Warden, you were able really from the point of transition, you kind of knew what you wanted to do. So there was kind of a clear focus to move into that.
It
Obviously
was.
for some in the military, it can't be, it's sometimes not as smooth as that.
No, not at all.
But for you, that worked out quite well.
And so I mentioned the long service list. So I had a contract for, I think we were still in that 5-year contract with the long service, 5 years.
I think so.
And so I did have one of them, but that was at the time that they were looking to change to the FTRS. So I was sort of, I had a job, but the Tower just, it was calling. Yeah, so I was just so lucky, really.
So well, you've come today wearing as I'm wearing my Veterans Commissioner body one, where you've got your Yeoman Ward one. An amazing privilege, I'm sure you felt, to actually be successful in the application, become a Yeoman Warder. So maybe just for our listeners, Shaun, maybe explain what exactly is that role, and maybe where does it take all the way back? Does it Henry VII? It dates back to?
Yeah, well, I would argue it goes back further, but I'll go from the beginning, because the whole experience was amazing. And obviously, when you go for a job, you don't know you're going to get it. So there we were. And I would say probably, and I still don't know of another job to this day, that on your first interview, they invite your family with you to go in. So you all go in. You're taken off one way, your family goes the other way. And I suppose it's a reassurance to the family, this is what you're getting into.
Okay.
You know, you may have experienced in the military living behind a fence, but this is sort of, more still. You're living in this wall, basically.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's part of it, and they get a feel of the families, let them know what they're actually getting into. Because it sounds grand, but there's lots of things that you do have to. You are represent the country.
Some limitations.
Yes,
to be living in that. Would it be fair to call it a goldfish environment?
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. And you're being watched. And I'll mention a few things that caught the public eye in a second. But so I joined that, took my family, and you're not sure, but the whole process, I was getting the phone call the next time saying, please come back for your next interview. And that happened twice. And the last one was with the constable. And we were then in a dilemma, because we were going to stay at Richmond, and Josh was going to go to school, stay up there. But the funny thing, we always laugh about it now, Dawn was in Edinburgh, and her boss in Edinburgh had said, because Dawn was serving as, and she was up in Edinburgh serving I think it was the 2 diff up there.
Okay.
She was with that.
She was in the
SBS.
The ADC?
Yeah.
Okay. Should maybe just, again, for our viewers, jump in there on Dawn. So Dawn, your wife, also served, but she's also one of the veterans champions here in Northern Ireland currently.
Yeah.
So I do see her from time to time in her role as a veterans champion.
Yeah.
So I probably know Dawn better than I know you.
You do, indeed.
All our meetings. So yes,
she certainly cuts around. But so at that time, she was in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
We gave our son the choice this was the choice. So her boss in Edinburgh had said, look, if you need to go to Catterick, I will get you a job in Catterick, which was amazing, really, as far as the military goes. So no complaints there. They were going to let her come back to Catterick. They would find her a job, and Josh could carry on his schooling. Josh said, no, I'm going to London with Shaun. So that was really nice. So off we went to London on our own, and Dawn went to Edinburgh to continue her career.
Okay.
So we got the job in the Tower, and then I started, and this is where the history comes into it. You don't have to know any of the history before you join the Tower.
Okay.
They generally pick you. You are given a task just before you go for part of the recruitment phase. I looked up Elizabeth I, and that's what I done. That's my presentation. But you once you get that, that's when the real learning starts. So you have 6 months. They give you a story, and the story is the Yeoman Warder's past. Our main job was actually, as well as we were guarding prisoners, we were looking after the crown jewels, we were looking after the buildings. A lot of these things had been watered down in time, but generally that's what the Yeoman Warders of the Tower would do. But a lot of our time was spent on telling stories of the tower. In fact, way back, that was how we earned our money. We would collect people at the gate, the wealthy people with a bit of cash in their pockets. I know a few very famous faces has been through the tower and being guided by Samuel Pepys was one of those who paid his way. In fact, he came about 3 times. And there was a lot to see in the tower. And the Yeoman Warders were the gatekeepers. So we would earn from that. Yeah, you want to come around? We'll show you the zoo animals. We'll show you the lions. We'll show you the tigers, the animals that hadn't been seen by sort of the normal public. So they were in the tower. We had the mint in the tower. So we were making money in the mint there from Edward I. He first moved the mint into the tower before it moved over the road in the 1800s. But so we were doing that. We had the crown jewels, of course, in the tower, which is a big thing.
Famously.
Yes. So and the other thing, especially in the Victorian period, they did want to see where kings and queens died.
Yes,
that was a huge
There's
thing.
been some pretty high profile. I was gonna say you actually
indeed.
lived there,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of other people who lived there, perhaps not through choice.
Yes.
If that's fair to say.
Yeah.
So right back to what Anne Boleyn,
Yeah.
Sir Walter Raleigh, I think was.
And people would pay to come and visit the site
Exactly
where
where-
Anne Boleyn was beheaded. They would come to see where St. Thomas More was held before he was taken up to Tower Hill and executed in 1540. So there was these things, and people paid money to do that, and Yeoman Warders would be the benefit of that. So we would take them around, and for an extra story, it'll cost you. Can you show me this? Oh yeah, it'll cost. So that's, I don't want to make it sound sleazy, but that's how the Yeoman Warders earned their money by doing that. So the Yeoman Warders have, going back to your point about Henry VII. Henry VII, is the first time that a guard was formed around the king that would wear the king's livery. His name is generally, if you belong to a lord, you could wear his badge. The king never really had that because he had the lords. But after the Battle of Bosworth Field, Henry VII formed a guard of elite men that would guard him. Yeoman Warders, although we say that is the birth of pretty much when we started as well, but actually Yeoman Warders were in the tower way before that. There was people guarding the gates and doors in the Tower of London when gates and doors were put in the Tower.
Put on there.
The uniform and the connection to the kings and queens, we guarded it was from William the Conqueror. In 1078, the first bricks were laid. So it was a royal palace above anything else. We say there's lots of things happened since with the mint, the animals, etc. But it was a royal palace, and it sort of was up until James I. He was the last king to stay there.
Yeah, so maybe you could almost say it became formalized somewhat in Henry VII's time.
Yes.
I think what's interesting about history too, and you obviously lived it being in that role, but I think that period was really brought to light was at 2012. So Henry VII defeats Richard III at Bosworth Field.
Right,
then in 2012, wasn't it? Was it?
No, so Bosworth Field, 1485. 1485.
But yes, but then about 2012 was the Richard III's remains.
Yes,
were
yes,
discovered
of
in
course.
Leicester. Is that right? I think I'm right with that date.
I actually went to the actual funeral
Is
at Bosworth
that
Field as they were bringing the coffin
really
through.
Brings that link to now what we haven't mentioned yet is that the nickname of the Yeoman Warders is the Beefeaters. So where does that come from?
That's a funny one, because what we'd also say to our public, and I know when I first joined, there's lots of sort of grumpy old beefeaters that would stand there and say, where did the nickname beefeater come from? And they would say, don't know, it's not us, because that was just a nickname. We were the Yeoman Warders of the Tower of London. No one really knew why we were called the beefeaters. But of course, there's always something behind the history. There's got to be that, and there's several So basically, we do believe that it's probably because we were given meat, food, beef as a reward of service.
Okay. Yeah.
So when the kings and queens or the high lords were in there's always someone of rank and privilege in the tower, whether that be the constable of the tower, lieutenant of the tower, who could afford the food. And we probably benefited from that. So I would say most of us would go down that line. We were rewarded food, whether it's beef or that. And it may have been a derogative term from the peasants' house side. Saying,
Well, one sort of a slight variation of that is that initially they tended to be very tall.
Yeah.
So therefore, the portion they received of beef was more than most because they were so big.
Yeah.
And
So there
had to
is
be led into the.
That is another theory. Another theory that we tasted the food before the kings and queens to test for poison. But who would poison your bodyguards? I mean, that can be quickly sort of pushed to one side. But that's another one that tourists come up with. And there's French words, the buffetier and stuff that come into the story.
So however it came, it is certainly a nickname.
It's certainly a nickname that sticks, and it's ours. And I think when I came, a lot of the older fellas would sort of push it to one side. But I think the younger generation, I say younger generation, we sort of embraced that, and that's who we were.
So any highlights of that time being a
many
warder?
many highlights. So I was there for 11 years. I joined in 2011, lucky to go there in 2011. So shortly after that was the Jubilee, and then also the Olympics. So straight away, within 12 months of being a beefeater, there I was in London with the biggest things that were happening, in the world. The cameras were down. So it was huge. It was a huge thing. So I had that. And there's lots going on during that time. I was also there with the Poppies, and I think everybody who served will know that the Poppies in London in 2014.
Yeah, that must have been very moving.
Absolutely,
actually,
absolutely
witnessing that.
And it was just a privilege to be there at that time. And we actually, the most moving thing of that time is, the whole display was amazing, and people, from the moment, I think very slowly as things were going on, it took a couple of weeks for people to warm up. For the moment, so we'd had work done in the chapel, and the Queen was coming to visit the chapel in 2014 to endorse the royal chapel and everything that had been done in there. So that was another moving moment. She'd come to visit us, and she was there for the chapel, but the Poppies were there at the same time. From that moment on, it just went crazy, and the whole part of London around the tower just become chocker. I mean, getting out the tower was immense. But the thing I always remember is they decided that very early on that they would build a mound with poppies around it, and they would put spotlights on that mound, and every night before last post was played, we would have a chance to read out the list of the fallen. And, we all had a turn of that, and it's quite emotional. It's quite a huge thing to stand there and read out 100 names in that night. And we'd done it for quite a long period up until the 11th of November. And we also had 2 or 3 stints at it. And you know what? Just a privilege and a great memory. Moving. And then just to finish on that, the 2018, the Flames, and a lot of people, that didn't take as much hold as what the Poppies did, but the Flames was incredible. They've just lighted candles in the moment in 2018. That was to commemorate the end, and that was incredible as well, just to be a part of that.
It comes across in this, Shaun, that you feel privileged. I'm sure you feel humbled, but also very proud of your service, both within the military and then within the Yeoman Warders. So it sounds like you've had like a fulfilled professional experience. Would that be
Yeah.
a good way of describing it?
Definitely. I was very lucky enough to have two careers that I didn't look at as work. It was a way of life, and just a great way of life. So from a Norfolk boy living in the council house, there I was living in the Tower of London.
Of
Incredible.
all the
Incredible,
addresses in
brilliant.
London.
And I always say my military service was what got me there. There's no way I could have got there unless I'd have done that
Military,
service.
yeah.
So,
And then you've gone from there then, so from Norfolk
Yep.
to the Tower of London via Afghanistan, Jordan, Bermuda, Germany, Falklands, wherever, and then Northern Ireland.
yes.
So coming full circle then, obviously
Yeah.
Don was from here.
So I'd done,
How you end up back here then?
yeah, so 5 tours of Northern Ireland during my career. I think earlier on in my career, because I joined in the 80s, I think 85 to sort of 90, that was generally the regiment's done a lot of time out here. And ours. So I remember very quickly after Gibraltar, rejoining Colchester, we had Fermanagh. So I was Fermanagh for 6 months. I then come back. Within a year and a half, we were Dungannon. Then Belfast in the early 2000s, so went to Belfast, and then finished in 2003 another residential. So 2 residentials, Londonderry first, and then to finish Ballykelly. So, and that's pretty much why we're here now, because Ballykelly, we sort of, that's where we were. Beautiful part of the country.
Yeah.
You've got Portrush and all the pretty much the coast, the west coast.
Yeah.
Just incredible. So we'd walked our dogs, myself and Dawn. We'd walked our dogs and Bally on the beach downhill.
Yeah.
And very quickly, the way we got here is when we were in the tower, we spent a lot of time on making memories for ourselves. We hadn't bought a house because we lived in military quarters. In the tower, we lived in the tower. We didn't at that time, we didn't really know positively where we were going to live. Hadn't made a decision. I would say about 6 years into the tower, and this is quite a sad story really, but we lost a guy. We lost a guy called Kenny. We saw his family go through a move from the tower. Now they had a house and they knew where they were going, so they were organised in that sense. But when we lost Kenny and they had to move out, we sat there and said, "Look, we need to make a decision. We had insurance is all set up, but we need a home." Dawn was always hinting the fact that she'd want to come home, and I felt comfortable over here. So we looked for a house, and she found one in Downhill, and that's pretty much why we ended up there. So we bought that in 2007 while I was serving. We spent a lot of our long weekends, so every month I'd have a long weekend, so we would generally come back to Northern Ireland, live in the house for that. COVID hit, and life changed, and at the end of that, there was a lot more time to come across with. We were doing, while the tower was closed, we were doing security duties, basically. And we were taking in turns. So I was a supervisor at that time. I was a yeoman sergeant.
Okay.
So I was swapping duties with my colleagues. We had to always have someone in the office, but that gave us some fudge. And so we came over sort of 2 weeks at a time. And I think we discovered that we could live just so comfortably over here in a modern environment. Downhill Beach was just right there. And
I know about that beach, carrying weight up and down it, training for Cameron patrols and everything else up and down that. That
when
beach.
you
From there to McGilligan's, usually 6 miles.
That's right.
6 miles from Downhill to McGilligan. So
I now live on that hill, where I just drive across and I can look from the viewing point onto McGilligan Ranges. And I generally tell people that I was firing on that range in
Well, so you've gone from Norfolk all over the world, and now you come to the centre of the universe to retire. Fantastic. So I've got a very quick ones to finish off. Anything you miss from military service?
No, because I've done it all. Like I said, my goal was to hit the job that I got at the end, so I was accomplished in that respect. I then went on to the greatest job in the world. So I went into something that I loved. So really have time to think about anything that I was missing, because I was in something that I felt so comfortable in. So no, I was trying to think, is there that I would say the only thing I don't miss was the long, the O groups that you would sit in and spend hours, it felt like 2 hours wasted sometimes. That then I found myself later on in my tower career that I got promoted to Yeoman Sergeant. I ended up back in that office, sitting on those O
You were the one
groups.
doing the long briefings at that point.
And
Imagine.
so, yeah,
Well, that
but-
last question then, you were 16, 17, you were a young soldier, so someone's at that age and they're thinking, oh, I'm not sure whether to go this route or not. What would you say to them?
Go that route. Go that route. Because, like I said earlier, you do 4 years, 5 years, you'll learn something in that time. Whether that's to make your bed, or whether that's another life skill, or whether that's a trade, you will learn something that will set you up, and you'll always remember. And the comradeship at that age, I think, as a young soldier, when you first join a unit, and you would know yourself that when you're in the early, you'd make it your mission to know everyone. And so as a young, so you just knew everyone, even, the top officers downwards, all the mates. That changed later on, I think, in rank. As you go up, you sort of know less and less. You don't need to know everyone, but the people you meet there and the comrades, I still to this day talk to people that I join with in
lifelong friends.
Just crazy, really. But yeah.
Shaun, absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you very much.
This remains for me as the Veterans Commissioner for Northern Ireland on behalf of the office. Thank you for your service and for taking the time to come in today and share your story.
Pleasure. Thank you.